Now, when I use the word peril, that means there is some danger, there is some emergency or an exigency situation. Now, physical hazard is something that is related to the person, that is the physical human being or the form, for the asset or for the life. Now, the moral hazards are something that is more towards the standard guidelines, the ethics. Good morning and welcome to session 4 in unit 4 of Principles and Practice of General Insurance, and we are going to talk about a very interesting topic called as the moral and physical hazards. Now, the first thing that you need to know about an hazard is all about insurance hazard means a condition or situation that is likely to increase the chances of loss arising from a peril. Now, when I use the word peril, that means there is some danger, there is some emergency or an exigency situation. Now, why do we bother so much about hazard? What exactly is this hazard all about? Is it all about the factor that only danger comes in and that's the time when we are going to think about insurance? Definitely not. But then for the insurance company, the entire calculation of the premium or about setting a policy itself is based on the risk and the danger factors. Because when they are going to suggest a policy to you, they are going to understand morally, physically, ethically, what are all the factors that is going to come in terms of risk that is inbuilt. So that's why hazard is a condition that they would take into consideration, which is going to definitely increase the chances of that particular event or situation to happen. So hazards are definitely an inbuilt factor for any insurance company when they start setting up any new policy. Now, there are two types of hazards that we need to know. The one is called as the physical hazard. The second one is called as the moral hazard. Now, physical hazard is something that is related to the person, that is the physical human being or the form, for the asset or for the life. Now, the moral hazards are something that is more towards the standard guidelines, the ethics, the principles and the values. So let's have a quick look into this. Now, the physical hazards indicate those dangers of subject matter of insurance which can be ascertained or identified by mere inspection of risk. So for example, if you're going to buy a car, now it is quite common that the car is prone to accident. The car is prone to any kind of accident where it can be hit by any other a car or a vehicle or any other person altogether. So physically, the car is in danger condition. It is quite imminent there. But that doesn't mean again that every day somebody is going to come and bang your car or somebody is going to create an accident to your car. But imminently, apparently, you will definitely know that the car, which is a physical asset, is prone to some sort of danger, and that is a physical hazard. Similarly, when you talk about a human being, as he walks on the road, he is subjected to some physical hazard. He might be hit by a vehicle, he might fall down, or there might be an electricity pole that can fall on him, or there might be any kind of physical peril that can happen on him, which can cause a loss of life. So physical hazard means the kind of situation which is going to intensify the activity altogether in terms of the danger. Now, the hazards are apparent in the subject matter itself. Now, that is very, very important, which I would like to say. Why the hazards are apparently there? Why? Because it is inbuilt. You don't have to worry about it at all. It is already there. So when you are talking about a product, an asset, a human life, it is inbuilt. Those hazards cannot be separated and seen as a different subject matter. They are inbuilt inside the system. They are inbuilt inside the entire process. So that hazard is something that is attached to it. So when you are looking into the policy, the underwriters will definitely take into consideration these hazards. They are not going to isolate it at any point of time and and say that, yes, these hazards are something different. It's going to be a different match altogether. Definitely not. But this is going to be something which is already inbuilt into it. So that is why I say that the hazards are apparently a part of the subject matter. Followed by the dangers are visible from very nature of the construction situation of the subject matter. Now, this is a quite interesting factor. Now, if I'm going to build a 10-story building in whichever part of our country, automatically there is a peril or there is a factor that is associated that the building can fall down or somebody can jump from the 10th floor, or there is a possibility that the building can crash, the building is subjected to earthquake, the building might be subjected to cyclone or flood or any kind of natural disaster. So what is happening here is that the visibility factor of the danger is quite evident from the physical asset itself. So that is why I would say that yes, when you apparently look into it, the nature and construction will tell you that the subject matter is being exposed to some kind of risk factor altogether. Followed by, now the examples of physical hazards of insurance are something like this. The nature of cargo, for example, when these are susceptible to damage, when they are susceptible in terms of the fragility factor, they might be damaged because of the handling factors, or they might get destroyed because the packaging was not there. So automatically, when you are talking about a physical hazard, it is more about the factor that it is an inbuilt nature. Sometimes you might try to understand that moment you are trying to opt for a business or opt for buying an asset, the risk is also inbuilt and you are buying that risk by default. Now, for example, if you are going to buy a heavy machinery like a bulldozer or a forklift, that means there is some risk factor that is associated with that machinery. Now, you cannot go back and say that machinery, I never knew about the risk. So similarly, in physical hazards, we believe that for every asset, for every human life, for every factor, there is some hazard that is associated with it. You need to overcome that hazard. You need to understand that hazard and then understand about buying up the insurance for it. Now, the next thing is that when you start seeing here, the travel factor. Now, I'm going to take about the ship. Now, when you start seeing that, the voyage factor through a ship during a monsoon time period itself is a very big hazard, because we know that monsoon can create a whole lot of damage to the coastal area as well as to ship that is traveling. Now that's a physical hazard which is inbuilt. So if you are traveling by the sea, if your cargo is moving by the sea, the exports or the shipment is happening through the sea, then they are automatically subjected to the hazardous condition that has been laid down there. Now you cannot go back and say that, sir, I never knew that while traveling through sea, there would be no hazards. So there is an inbuilt factor. Similarly, the construction, the age of the vessel, the bad shape of the ship, or there is some machinery damage, or the ship gets stranded in the middle of the sea. These are all the physical hazards that are inbuilt. Now, in the same thing, if I'm going to say, even when you are traveling by the plane in the air, anything can happen in the mid-air. The plane might crash, the plane might have a crash landing, it might have an engine failure, there might be a brake failure, whatever can happen to the plane, which means to say that when you are buying that physical asset called as aeroplane, there is some hazard which is already attached to the asset. So you will not be able to go back and detach it separately and talk. You are buying an asset with the hazard into it. Even when you buy a mixer or a grinder or a TV or a fridge, all these appliances will have hazard because they might be prone to some short circuit, they might be prone to some physical damage, the glass might break. So there are certain hazards which are inbuilt with it. So you will not be able to de-link yourself out of this hazard and then say that, sir, I have been doing it. So this is why I say physical hazards is mandatory. It is already there with us. Now, the moral hazard. The moral hazard indicates those dangers which relate to the character, integrity, mental attitude of the insured. Now, this is quite important for all of us to understand. Mental attitude. Now, which means to say that when I'm talking about the morality factors, this is more about your characteristics, ethics, values, and principles that we carry. So these are not visible factors, but these are not something which cannot be, physically seen or, touched upon, but these are intangible factors. They are inside. They are reflected upon that particular situation. So that's why I say moral hazards are something that is inside you. That is, it's a part of your character rather than just like the physical hazard. Now, these in fact refer to the behavior and attitude of the insured on their employees towards the subject matter of insurance from the viewpoint of encouraging or discouraging the causation of the insured event. In every risk, the element of moral hazard may be in varying degree and it's always present. Now, that is why we say that when it comes to moral hazard, it is always about how you have understood the situation, how you have interpreted the entire factor. Certain companies are very transparent in the terms of their operation, in the terms of their recruitment, or in the terms of working conditions that has been predicted. Why do they do that? Why do they believe so? That because they want to be transparent, because they want to give away the terms and conditions first to their employees, even to the prospective employees altogether. They want to tell before itself what they are exactly into and what are the hazards that are involved with them. Now, I don't mean by saying that work itself is an hazard, but there are terms and conditions that one has to understand very clearly before taking up that nature of job. You cannot assume, you cannot presume things that every time it will be a rosy picture there. I just walk in and I will be able to do the job and I will be able to get the money that I desire. So it is the morality of the employer to go further and disclose the details as far as possible. Now, for example, let's say that I'm going to take up the job of a fitness coach or a trainer in a gym, in a leading multi-fit gym altogether. Now, it is the factor that the employer needs to tell me what are the challenges morally and ethically in taking up that nature of job. That's where the moral hazard comes into picture. Because many people, they presume that the nature of job is quite inbuilt. They know it, nothing is going to go wrong. Now, I might have been a qualified doctor, but when I take up the role of a doctor in a hospital, the hospital has to enlighten the doctor, telling exactly what are all the challenges that you need to face. What kind of behavior is expected from you? How do you need to go further and how do you need to see that? How do you need to treat patients? What do you need to talk to them? So when a treatment is being done, what kind of principles do you follow? Do you ask them to sign up? Do you openly tell what is the factor? How do you maintain their different, the medical treatments and all those? So this is where the moral hazard is a very important thing. Why? Because if we tend to go on the reverse side, where we tend to move away, where we tend to go away altogether, where we tend to see that we are not trying to follow the rules, we are trying to hide ourselves from the different factors, then automatically we are landing in trouble. So that's why I will always say that you need to give the maximum cooperation to the insurers by suggesting the real factors of how your business is and how well are you in terms of your principles and ethics. Now, the examples of the moral hazard is that now most of the accidents when they insure, they behave because of the carelessness that has happened. Now, whenever you go and buy a vehicle, it is quite nominal that the showroom salesman induces you to buy that vehicle. He says that that's the best vehicle available on road. And people get carried away by the name, by the brand, by the look, by the feel, and by the feature. But unfortunately, no salesperson would ever give you the advice of how to drive it carefully. Nobody says that why you need to wear a seat belt. Nobody tells you that why you need to keep your braking lights in proper condition. Nobody tells you that why you need to do your service, why you need to keep your oil change, why you need to keep your check on the car on a regular basis. That is because it is purely left on the driver. So now what happens is that if you are morally a correct person, a morally induced kind of a company, it is up to you to educate the drivers first. You would go ahead and say, sir, please be careful while driving. Let's try to induce the factor of carefulness. Let us not be careless while driving. That is exactly an example of being morally right there. Now that morally right will make you even more stronger in the society. People will believe you. People will say, wow, this company is able to give me all the disclosure even before I have asked for. So that is why I would say that being morally right is always superb. Followed by the insured might always be uncompromising and in a litigation minded. He may refuse to accept the amount offered by the insurers and might present for more amount. So let us be very, very clear about this factor. How much are you going to get as insurance? How much are you going to make that money factor altogether? So what and all are the terms and conditions? So tomorrow, it is no point that you go and fight against the company. You need to know that what we are going to get exactly, how much we are going to take back. So from the insurance company standpoint also, I would say that the disclosure at the first level will definitely make a difference for the person who's taking the insurance. Now, the distinction between this is that physical hazard relates to subject matter of insurance, whereas moral hazard relates to the character integrity. Physical hazard can be seen, assessed and rated. Moral hazard can be seen, assessed and rated accordingly. Cannot be done so easily. Why? Because you cannot rate it up directly. You have to check it up. It's a valuation based on your internal factors and not on the external factors. While the physical hazards can be effectively dealt, it can be easily because there are a lot of conditions, a lot of factors under which you will be able to deal it. Whereas the moral hazards cannot be done. Why? Because you need to be cautious enough in making the people understand the realistic situation. It's more about a self-realization. It is not just about a damage control exercise that we are trying to talk about. It is more about being there, understanding the situation and giving yourself the best for what the situation demands. With this, I come to the conclusion of this session. I hope and believe that this session was of a great help and resource to you. In the upcoming sessions, we will be talking more about the premium factors, the statistics that are involved in insurance and how they matter in terms of rating up the insurance. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today on this wonderful session.